All right. Hello and welcome to The Unlocked Investor. I'm your host, Ian Robertson, and today I'm joined by Katie Ketner. Katie is a dedicated wife and mother of two young boys who has a passion for personal finance. She loves discussing budgets, but for her, it's not just about the money, it's about prioritizing what you value the most in life. Her family strives to be intentional with their money and build the life that they love. Katie, welcome.
Thank you, Ian. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you here. So we're just gonna start real basic here because this is
Sure,
this is all gonna be about money, why it matters, how to direct your money in the right direction, and sort of figure things out.
sure, sure,
So
sure.
from the basics, where do you start with saving? You get your paycheck, and usually it just all flies out the door. How do you start?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I'll probably have a pretty long-winded answer to your question. And so I think when we talk about personal finance, right, it is very personal. So I was very blessed that I had parents who were super intentional with their money. They wanted to create a life for their family that was different than the life that they grew up with. And my dad, one of his favorite sayings that is, I grew up with was it doesn't matter what you make, it matters what you save. And he would say that all the time. And my parents were very open about money conversations and like, hey, we're not going to do this because we want this. For example, Ian, I think we were talking when our families were having dinner a couple months ago, where I said, I remember being really young and my mom saying, hey, yeah, we're not going to go on vacation this summer because we're going to buy a hot tub for our deck that we're going to enjoy for many years to come. And we did. And so all that to say, I grew up in a home where I understood the importance of saving. I understood the delayed gratification. So it laid a foundation, and I think just naturally, right? Like I'm an outgoing extrovert, but I am also a huge nerd. And so I bend more towards saving anyway. So when you say about like where to start, I think of when my husband and I first got married. So now you know my background. My husband's background was very different. They didn't really talk about money. My husband, had his own home, was very independent when we got together, but is definitely bending more towards the spending, right? Not really concerned about saving. So here you know my background, you know his background. How do you come together? And I get asked that a lot. Um, and the way that we were able to come together money wise, right? And you said it in my intro. Yes, I'm passionate about money and budgeting, but it's really helping people create the life that they want. So where the secret sauce, where we finally really became unified in money, whether it is a savings goal, whether it's um what you want your future to look like, was dreaming. So finally, when my husband and I were able to sit down and say, hey, like, what do we want our life to look like a year from now? What do we want it to look like 5 years from now? That's when my husband was able to start to understand that having a simple budget, having delayed gratification, setting goals for a month from now, a couple months from now, really helped us then down the road. So once he saw that like big picture, once we talked about like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to be able to do this? Wouldn't it be cool to be able to give this amount each month to your church or an organization you love to support? And once that dreaming started to happen, we were able to come together and come up with a plan for our money, which is a budget. So I know you were asking, Ian, how do you get started with saving? I really think you have to sit down, whether it's yourself, you're single, whether you have a partner, sit down and think, hey, what do we want our life to look like? What's our why, right? Like, what's our why? And then from that, you can start to build out a budget. You can start to build out goals for yourself. And that's where once you have the why, then it's more, okay, looking at those actual numbers, and putting your numbers in what you value.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it sounds a lot like operating a business, but for your own household. Like you're looking into the future, you're planning
Exactly.
ahead, and then you're finding the steps that you need to take in order to get to that point.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yep. Yep.
Oh, awesome.
Sure.
All right. So you have to dream, you have to have a why.
Yes. Yes.
Um, that's the starting point. Now, you guys have there's so many like unique things about your story, and so I'm gonna like
Yes.
start
Yes.
start bit by bit going through it. So
Yeah.
first off, you guys were very intentional. I think this was one
Hmm.
of your whys is we want to pretty much live off of one income
Yeah.
and have one parent stay at home. And so can you talk to like that first off, that journey to even like be able to
Yeah.
achieve that, especially in a world where it seems like everybody needs a two income household.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So we got to the point in our marriage where we were kind of unified, and it even wasn't so much like, oh, we hope one day one of us can stay home and we can do our life on one income. It really was more like we wanted the financial freedom to do what we wanted. That was probably really like the initial goal. And what was cool is we had just moved to a new area, found a new church we really liked. And after they heard our story, they asked us to be involved in teaching some personal finance courses, through a certain curriculum that our church was behind. And just continuing to be encouraged by others who were working through personal finances and teaching the material, we basically laid a foundation, honestly, of multiple years of just living below our means. We really didn't know, Ian, like we didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, our future, but we knew we wanted the freedom to pivot to it. And the way to get there was just living below our means. And so we kind of had this community around us, right? Helping other people get to that point of financial freedom. We didn't want to be stressed by money each month. We wanted to have the freedom, again, to pivot our life. And so through multiple years of just knowing, simply knowing where every dollar was going and making sure that it was going towards our goals. And it doesn't mean, when I say budget too, like it doesn't mean never doing anything fun. It doesn't mean, being so strict and feeling like you're stuck. It really was just a budget is just a simple plan and like guardrails. And I've heard it said from other thought leaders in this space, like just permission to spend. So giving yourself that personal budget line item to spend money on whatever you want, planning for fun vacations, right? It's just that intentionality. So long story short, after so many years of being intentional with our money, we realized that we were at a place, or we're approaching it very soon, where we could go down to a single parent home. What's crazy is that ended up becoming so important, so much more important than we ever could have imagined. Our second son was born very premature. He was born under a pound, 4 months early. And really from that day on, like our life has definitely never been the same. So long story short, many medical issues, um, 7, 8 months in a hospital before coming home, requiring round the clock medical care. And this was still in the COVID season a little bit towards the end, and it was super hard. Our son qualified for 24/7 nursing, but we simply could not find that in the area that we live. And so it became a necessity for us, in order to bring our son home from the hospital after 7 or 8 months, for one of us to be able to stay home with him. And thankfully, we were able to make the decision wasn't like, oh, can we afford it? We had been building for so many years the practices of living below our means. that it was more a checking in with each other, like, hey, like what makes sense for our family? Is it your job, mine? Like who who does it fit that best with, like personality, basically being able to craft that. And that was the conversation, as opposed to being so stressed and, oh, can we do this money wise, right? Like we had the free, because of all of those years of intentional living, we thankfully had the freedom to make this decision. And I want to say too, like, this was not glamorous. We did not have crazy like jobs in a high tech field. We do live in an expensive area outside of a the biggest city in America. And so it really was being super intentional with our budget. And even at one point, like we really wanted to go before kids. We were like, oh, we really want to do this cool trip to Europe. And my husband like worked crazy overtime in order to make that happen, right? Did we have the money for him to not work extra and us to just go on the trip? Yes. But because he did that overtime, we were able to clearly cash flow it and still make our savings goals. So all that to say, we didn't know what we were prepping for. We just knew we were prepping for financial freedom. And that financial freedom became so important when our second son was born. Um, so yeah, very, very grateful for the practices that we had in place.
And yeah, it sounds like the way that you did it, just living below your means, which,
Mhm.
general advice, live below,
Right,
you don't
right,
cap out,
right,
don't live
right.
paycheck to paycheck. But it also is doubly effective because one, it's allowing you to save and grow cushion,
Hmm.
but it's also
Yes,
giving you the ability to make less if you want to say pivot your career or whatever that is.
100%,
So
100%. And I would say like right earlier when I talked about how when I was super little, my parents exposing me to the fact, right, of delayed gratification. Like sometimes when we're in a journey and say we have a lot of debt because we've been living our life, right? Putting expenses on credit cards and seeing that debt higher and higher. It is a very big behavioral switch to then say, no, I'm going to intentionally change my spending habits. It's like losing weight, right? Like it's so hard for some of us. But the only way to really get there is to work really hard to change your habits. And for some people, that shift is really big. Like you came from a family where you were living paycheck to paycheck, that in order to feel better about something bad that happened, your parent took you, shopping, right? Or, oh, this was like a really hard week. Let's reward ourselves with like going out to eat, right? Like if that's in your DNA, that's really hard to break. And so when I have talked with other people that are kind of at the start of this journey, right, that's a huge hurdle to overcome. And so I would just say that that's one of the biggest things I would love to talk about with you is in that monthly plan, right, that you're making for your money. It's really forcing you to be honest about yourself from like a psychological perspective, and to be okay with that delayed gratification, and to be okay with for example, one of the areas that we just don't care about keeping up with the Joneses on is vehicles. So we buy used vehicles that are a couple years old and we drive them until they absolutely, we have to pay the dealership to like take the car at the end, right? Like, but that's just one of the ways that we had to learn. Would it be nice to have a Tesla that like my coworkers are driving, and I pull up and I'm parking right next to them and there's my 2013 little SUV, and there's their new Tesla, and there's their new like BMW, right? And yeah, is that hard sometimes? For sure. But you have to, again, go back to your why and be like, you know what? Yeah, that would be really nice to drive a new car. But you know what I love even more? I love that we don't have a car payment. And so that money means that we can buy family memberships to a museum or family memberships to the zoo. Or it means that I'm like putting money away for my kids' college, right? Like the average car payment, I think in America is like 500 something right now. I recently saw. Okay, like what if that money was used every month to save for your in a 529 plan, right? And was able to grow tax free. So again, there's such this behavioral honest that it's not really about the money. It's really, again, about what do you really value? What do you really want out of life? And what are you kind of willing to sacrifice on to make your beautiful life happen? And your life that you really value might look so different than mine, right? Some families want to like give up everything and live out of an RV and explore and great. My family, isn't doing that, right? But that's really what's so cool about personal finance and also hard about personal finance.
So yeah, I mean that all makes a whole lot of sense, and you compared it to like habit breaking, pretty much,
Yeah,
where just like losing weight and changing your eating habits or your exercise routines. Same thing with
right.
your spending. So with any habit breaking, it seems like you need guardrails and you need
Yeah,
some sort of accountability. And
for
so
sure.
how how do you get that accountability in well just speak in a relationship where there's we'll say a marriage where there's two
Yeah,
people
yeah,
and they have completely different standpoints because money fights, as we know, are a huge factor
yeah,
in
definitely.
marriage, and so we want to avoid that. We want to see how can
Yeah,
have that accountability without the fights.
yeah, yeah. So I will say the first time you sit down and try and talk through a plan for your money, a budget, it's going to be super hard and it probably will bring on a fight or two. And there probably will be very like intense discussion, but like that's good because what this budget is forcing you both to do is to come together and say, okay, we're different people, but where can we come together on and agree upon? This is an example. I am like, if it wasn't for my husband, who's more the free spirit, I would probably like have like no fun money or whatever. Like I just probably wouldn't. But my husband's able to be like, no, like that, whatever money is so important to me. And so we're able to come together and almost like find that compromise, right? Because it's not going to be perfect in my eyes. It's not going to be perfect in his eyes. It's again like how can we create a plan for our money that is sustainable for both of us? That you're kind of like almost like signing off on a contract, so to speak. And right, negotiations on a contract, the first couple times you do a budget is so hard because you are working through this initial sort of like contract for your life, right? Um, but it's going to get easier and easier and easier because you're going to see it start to work. You're going to understand, like you might not even understand where some of your money is going, right? It's going to take a little bit to understand. It's going to be like kind of hurtful. You might say, oh, like we're only going to spend, $100 a month to eat out. And you realize like very quickly in the first week of a new month, like, oh, we already like hit that. So like there's little like painful moments. And what I would say is, right, like my husband and I, we've been doing this budget plan for our life for so many years, right? We'll be married 10 years this summer. We, our conversations now at the beginning of a month are like super quick and super high level. Like, hey, this is like something new that's going on this month, or hey, this is something going on this month. Like, let's like account for it, right? Really simple. But at the beginning, like it might be a hey, you know what? Like we start talking about it. This isn't going well. Like let's take a break. Let's come back to it. Like it might take time and that's okay. Just stick with it and know that it will get easier and easier.
And what about for people that are right now in a huge hole, trying to just
Yeah.
stay afloat, trying to not even thinking about
Yep.
getting out, but just like trying to literally just stay afloat?
Stay afloat. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I recently had a friend that we've been friends for over 15 years and recently in the last month said, can you like sit down with me and help me? Like, I need help money wise. Like, I am maxing out credit cards. I'm taking out more credit cards. I need you to help me because I feel really hopeless in this. Like, I feel really hopeless. There was a lot of shame, um, there. And so she asked if I would be willing to talk her through creating her first budget. Um, and what I would say the first steps to that is in order to make a plan, right? She had a little bit of homework that I asked her to do beforehand. So, and it took time, right? It took her a couple weeks, honestly, to get this information together. But I wanted to know, look back on all of your credit cards the last month, your bank statements, like what did you spend and put it into categories, right? Like let's look back. Wanted a list of all of her debts with the balances. And so she had this information and finally we were to the point of sitting down and actually going through and creating a budget online together for her. And by the end of it, I think it's so helpful sometimes, like when we don't know what's going on with our money, it is just so unknown. And it's like this hovering darkness that we can't even like start to mentally grasp. But when you start to actually put it in a format of understanding, this is how much money I have coming in. These are my fixed expenses to just live, like you're saying, Ian, like this is my car payment, this is my rent, this is my food bill, and then you list out all of your debts, you start to say, okay, this isn't great, but at least now I know, right? So now we were at the point that we could make a plan, right? And so a lot of people you'll hear like the debt snowball where you try and tackle your debts from smallest to largest, right? Some people are very concerned about the interest rate, right, on particular loans, however you want to do it. And then also looking back, it brought awareness to, ooh, like for her, it was, I just randomly go shopping for fun. Like I don't need anything, but I go shopping for fun at like Target. And when she saw how much each month she was doing that or going out to eat, and then how much was her loan balance for some of these smaller credit cards, it started to say, ooh, if I can, like an easy win was realizing if I limit myself to, because she really wanted to get out of debt, if I limit myself to $100 of like going out to eat and I'll allow myself like $50 for like random shopping, what was left over was enough to pay off one of her balances in a month. So like she was able to, without making any more money, but just seeing it in black and white, she had the insight. And then all of a sudden it went from being like, this is so scary. I'm so stuck. I can't do this to, wow, like that's going to be a quick win in a month. If I can look myself in the mirror and say like, I'm committed to doing this, she could make a big win in a month. And I think once that starts to happen, then you just build on that momentum. And it might be like there was a season I shared when we were especially like saving for a down payment for a house. Like my husband worked like so much overtime. It wasn't just for fun things. Sometimes it was, hey, we really want to do this or, save more for a down payment on a house. Um, there are seasons where the answer might be, hey, I'm going to deliver pizzas and bring in an extra. Or, hey, I'm an accountant and I'm going to, I have a corporate job, but you know what? Like, I'm going to reach out to this local accountant and see if they need some like bookkeeping help. That's not always necessary, right? And that's really hard. And that's a type of sacrifice. Um, but in the example of my friend, like it was just a simple win of like, if I can control this behavior and make this behavior change, that alone was enough for her to start feeling the momentum of winning.
Yeah. And so the budget isn't necessarily like a cage to hold you in. It's more so
No.
like an informational report to tell you here's what you're kind of spending on everything. Let's see where's the
Yeah.
waste and try and take
Yes.
that away.
Yeah. Something I again, nerd here, right? So I definitely, I remember when I was home on maternity leave with our first son, and I'm up in like the middle of the night, like 3 a.m. I decided one month, like, you know what? I am going to start doing research on like every line item in our budget and see if there's any way that I can just make some improvements. And Ian, it was crazy. We were paying for less like data back before like unlimited, right? Like this is how many years ago, back before like everyone had unlimited. Um, for our phone bill, for instance, we were paying like $90 a month for both of us. Okay, not terrible. But then I found Mint Mobile that if you prepay for the year, it would be only $30 a month for both of us. Okay, there's $60, right? Oh, we had a random credit card through our bank. Okay, fine. Found a credit card that gives you 2% back on everything. Okay, there's like a little bit of win each month. Um, what else? Oh, the big one was online savings accounts. So like our local bank, right, giving us 0.01%, an online savings account I think right now our online savings account is like 3.8%, something like that right now, right? Like all of those, shopping your insurance. I mean, everyone should be shopping their car, home, whatever insurance you have, like every single time it renews, right? Just doing that, I remember saved like that 15%, right? Or whatever. And so me just being intentional of time that I was like up in the middle of the night anyway, like feeding our son, ended up finding all this like extra room in our budget. And we just had a baby. So I was able to use like that money that I saved and start like saving in a 529 for him each month. And so that's really cool to actually logged on this morning and saw that balance. And so I love that too. I love that too of like you were saying, Ian, the lower your expenses, the less it takes for you to live, the sooner you get to financial freedom. So everyone can be okay with whatever level cost of living that they're okay with. But the lower you're able to be okay with that, the quicker you're going to gain financial freedom for sure. The bigger the margins. And again, it comes back to what my dad says and still says, and my parents are just such models in that way, is it's not what you make, it's what you save. And I'm so grateful again for that legacy and what it's then meant for my kids.
Yeah, and I love the practical steps there, right? Like the simple things that literally anybody can do just to save even a few
Yes.
dollars a month in each category.
Yep,
It
yep,
adds up, and especially when
yep,
you
yep.
put that into a savings account. Now that savings account is growing more, like or invest it, things are
Yes.
quicker. It's compound.
Exactly. Instead of paying extra to these companies, right, for these fixed expenses that I had, instead that money was being invested into like an S&P 500 that has, grown as my son has grown. So exactly, Ian, it's like the money working for me, like not against me
Right.
each month.
Yeah.
And that's really right. Like that's how you end up like building wealth long term for sure.
Absolutely. And so you guys, like you said, you guys have been on this path now
Hmm.
for many years. I would say, you guys know what
Yeah.
you're doing, and it's been working for what you've wanted it, how you've wanted it to work for you
Right.
guys.
Right.
What would you say are like 1 to 3 just practical, simple things that
Mm.
you guys do, um, just to sort of keep in check? Like you mentioned the
Yes.
monthly meetings that are just quick and simple, but
Yep.
they're
Yep.
still there. Is there anything else that like you guys do still to this day that's keeping you, keeping you going and keeping you on the right track?
Yeah. So I would say one of like the fun things is dreaming. Like I truly believe that. Like this is meant to be like fun. So randomly, we looked like earlier this week, like, oh, like what's a studio apartment in like Lower Manhattan? Like just dreaming, right? Like, oh, well, what if, in X amount of years we could, buy an Airbnb in Lower Manhattan because we love the city and we're in commutable distance. Like, I would say it sounds silly, but like continuing to dream for yourself, if you're single, with your partner, if you have a partner, like continuing to dream and be in front of your why makes you still willing to see, to park next to a Tesla and a BMW and be in your Kia, right? Like it just kind of keeps that, and it's kind of the fun part. So I would say that's important, from a not very practical, but an important why. Um, the second thing I would say is if you are with a partner, remembering that you are both so different. So what is really cool about having this plan for your money is then you're able to give each other the freedom to live that out how you want. For example, we've established I'm a saver. So I am more like I save and save and save, and then I probably do something like kind of bigger with my money, right? And it's usually an experience. Like it'll be going to see a show on Broadway. It'll be whatever, staying over somewhere with like a friend and that. But my husband, like he will have more maybe more like frequent purchases, but he's very much into like buying super sustainable organic like clothing, right? Like that. An example of how our budget has shifted to that I needed to learn was as we, got to the point where we had paid off our debt, right? It got to a point where my husband started getting really passionate about food. And so we'll be honest, what we do, Ian, is we don't really eat out much. Like eating out, I think is such an area, like it, the quality of the food for the most part will be, lower than you making it in your kitchen. And the markup on food is so much, right? Especially like alcohol, but food as well, right? Like you're paying for that experience. So we really don't eat out much, but we buy pretty much all of our food from like farmers, from like really good sources. But that's because that's what my husband super values. Now I'm, coming on board and understanding the importance of it, right? Like, but we have the freedom, like you have the freedom to spend your money how you want, ultimately. So like just together, we have that freedom to be like, you know what? Like we're really going to have a pretty low out to eat budget each month, but we're going to have a very robust grocery line item where we can feel really good about who we're supporting, the family, the farmers, we're on first name basis, they know us, they know our kids. And we can feel really good about the food that we eat. And again, it doesn't mean I don't go out. I was out, last night in the city with friends. It doesn't mean that that never happens. It just means that we have, just like you were saying, Ian, a company, right? They can't spend money on everything. They have to prioritize the projects that they put their money to. It's the same, with you and your partner, or you creating the life for yourself. So, um,
I love that. Yeah,
uh,
and I mean, even just like the perspective shift. Even if you're not necessarily saving money, you're just switching how you're spending it. So instead of like a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't afford organic food. I can't afford,
Mhm.
fresh produce
Mhm.
for my family." But what if you didn't eat out at all, like, or what
Yes,
if you ate out less?
true.
You probably could
Right.
make some of that work,
You
So
probably
it's
could.
shifting things too.
Yeah, and something else I want to mention as I was thinking about our talk today was I see a difference sometimes, right? Like I'll be honest, like our kids, they do a lot of fun like fun things, right? Like we're members at zoos. They were at a zoo yesterday, at museums. Like they are at playgrounds. They are going on hikes. Like they are doing all of these things. But what they haven't really done a lot of is they haven't been like taken to a Target or a Walmart and been like, hey, like go and pick something out, right? Um, all that to say, we are trying to be intentional as parents to like showing them and exposing them to things outside of like the material world to a certain extent. Like trying to have them enjoy life, like going to the library, basically the amount of advertising, right, we were exposed to versus our parents, the amount of advertising they are exposed to versus us is so huge. And I think just for like parents out there, when you think of your legacy, wanting to almost limit that exposure a little bit. And so we try and be intentional, I would say, and it ends up impacting our budget like in a positive way, right? Because we're not out shopping, we're not going out to eat all the time, right? But they have such great experiences. Like for example, I took our oldest to see like a Broadway show recently, his first Broadway show, right? There's not many kids his age that have seen a show. He's probably like one of the youngest kids in the theater. And like we were able to do that because I'm not like taking him to like the Dollar Tree every week and like buying a bunch of like junk that he's just going to throw away with. Like we don't really spend a lot on toys, but then we do on experiences. So I would just that intentionality comes through even in that way when we look at our budget and plan for our money.
I love it. All right. Awesome. Well, Katie, I really appreciate everything that you
Of
were able to
course.
share, especially your story and how you guys have been able to get to financial freedom and build out based on the life that you're trying to live and a legacy also that you're trying to build out for your children as well. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate the time that you spent here with me and with us today. And yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
sounds good. All right. Thanks so much, Ian, for having me.
Thank you.